As part of the 30th anniversary celebrations of the Constitutional Court, Sakina Kamwendo sat down with Chief Justice Mandisa Maya for this exclusive interview.
Welcome to the Constitutional Court, and this year South Africa marks 30 years since this august institution was established, with the first Chief Justice, Justice Arthur Chaskalson, appointed in 1994, and of course 30 years on since it's been in inception, we have our very first female Chief Justice in Justice Mandisa Maya. And this court, of course, supremely important in protecting, safeguarding, implementing and interpreting our Constitution so that that document becomes a living one for the people of South Africa. And we are honored to be joined today by the Chief Justice of the Republic of South Africa, Justice Mandisa Maya. Thank you so much for your time, and thank you for the warm welcome.
Thank you for having me, Sakina. It's my pleasure.
Justice Maya, you come to this court at a time when there seems to be such a spotlight on the judiciary, where everything seems to be known by everyone about what's going on from the lowest to the highest courts. How has the journey been so far?
It's been quite challenging. Luckily for me, I lead a group of professionals, seasoned lawyers in the form of judges and to some extent magistrates. They are people who know their rights and finally attuned to their responsibilities in terms of the Constitution. So I have this tremendous wall of support around me, which I appreciate deeply. But then I have to put in the hours myself. That there's so much to do. There are so many challenges. I came with a blueprint in place, which made it easy for me in terms of devising a vision. The judiciary had actually done that for itself. So my work is cut out for me. I know exactly what needs to be done. So slowly, one painful step at a time, the judiciary is looking at having these issues addressed. And key to this, this endeavor that the judiciary has set upon is the achievement of this institutional independence I mentioned, because we believe that once this arm of state is fully responsible for its business, to put it simply, we determine our own budget, we determine our own priorities, our needs, what the judiciary, needs to happen to deliver on its constitutional mandate to the people it serves. We need to be in the driver's seat. So it's in addition to the work one does of being a judge, sitting in court and producing judgments and ensuring that the Constitutional Court, for which I'm primarily responsible, is run properly. One has to look after this huge project, but there has been progress. There has been progress. I'm quite cagey. I use that word advisedly, but there has been some progress.
It's still early days in your tenure.
Very early days.
But looking back, which landmark judgment would you say best encapsulates the transformative promise of our Constitution over the last 30 years?
In my view, it would have to be its first judgment, State versus Makwanyane, which entrenched the right to life by declaring the death penalty unconstitutional and striking it down. There is nothing more precious than life, and that judgment actually set the tone for the work of the court and the approaches it was going to assume, going forward in carrying out its constitutional duty. And in the 30 years, there's a huge compendium of cases that one can list that the court has delivered, judgments that have had a profound effect on the lives of South Africans and for the country, not limited to South Africa, but globally. those judgments have been used to support similar cases in other jurisdictions, and the Constitutional Court of the Republic of South Africa commands huge respect from the global family.
So, Chief Justice, the issue of inequality in South Africa, it's at times been described as this triple axis that South Africa has had to deal with: inequality, unemployment, and poverty. Inequality is something that our Constitution, or at least the promise is there that the Constitution would help us to deal with that. Unfortunately, it hasn't happened. We remain the most unequal society in the world. We've held that dubious distinction for too long. Do you think that the Constitutional Court, through its work in the cases that have come before it, through the judgments that have been delivered, has done its part sufficiently so to help alleviate inequality in South African society?
It saddens one greatly to hear that our country, holds the dubious mantle of being the most unequal country in the entire world. And it saddens one when an ordinary South African, waves that small book, our Constitution, around and asks, what has this achieved for us? And you don't really have an answer for them. But that said, I'd like to think that this court has played its part in this constitutional model. It has discharged its constitutional obligation and continues to do so. One need only look at the judgments it has delivered in a span of 3 decades, starting with Makwanyane, of course. Look at Grootboom, which dealt with the right to housing. You look at the Treatment Action Campaign case, which dealt with the right to health care and the state's obligation to provide HIV medication to those afflicted with that syndrome. You look at progressive judgments that it has delivered in cases of equality, declaring the common law definition of marriage, for example, and the relevant section in the Marriage Act that excluded same-sex couples unconstitutional, making it possible for same-sex couples to adopt and so on. But especially on socioeconomic rights, it has a whole catalogue of judgments that prove its commitment to ensuring that the mandate it carries to ensure that all South Africans receive treatment that will ensure their dignity and equality, the protection of the fundamental rights of everybody in this country. It has discharged that obligation.
There is criticism, however, that perhaps at times the court could have been more prescriptive in terms of the time frames that needed to be adhered to for these judgments when they are delivered, for those who, the state in most instances where the Bill of Rights may have been contravened. That lack of instruction in terms of this needs to be done in such a period of time. Do you take that criticism as the court, in that perhaps there have been times when the court could have been more forthright in setting the boundaries and timelines for when the redress needed to happen?
That may be so, Sakina, but one has to acknowledge a provision in the Constitution itself that recognizes the limitations that the state may have in discharging some of its obligations and ensuring that the rights which are guaranteed in the Constitution are granted, timeously.
But what is timeously?
You may have me there, Sakina, but one has to acknowledge that the Constitution itself recognizes that the state may not be able to deliver on some of the constitutional promises, as expeditiously as the South African populace might expect. It envisages a determination of a delivery of a right having regard to limitations, available resources, progressive realization of these fundamental rights. So with the limitations that there are, I'm almost scared to say this, that South Africa is, after all, it's a developing country. Although we like to think that it is wealthy enough to take care of the basic needs of its citizens. But it is not always possible to achieve these things as quickly as they should be achieved.
But I also want to touch on a few other issues. When we take a look at the backlogs in our courts, and you know the saying, justice delayed is justice denied. And some of these cases just drag on and on and on. And looking at those challenges, Justice Maya, surely you must be concerned about that. If someone is told now that the soonest they can have a hearing for a road accident fund case in which instances some people may be in dire need of reparation so that they can continue a decent quality of life, surely it cannot be that people have to wait for a date 5 years from now.
The judiciary fully agrees with you, Sakina. And again, I'm not blame shifting, but there is a reason why there are backlogs. A simple example of the number of judges remaining static over all these years. We see it does not take a rocket scientist to be able to discern that the crime is skyrocketing in this country. Litigation has exploded. It has grown exponentially over time. Courts are flooded with work, but there are only so many warm bodies to do this work. So backlogs build up. And there are other factors that lead to backlogs quite apart from that.
So it speaks to public confidence in that regard, in the judiciary as a whole. And when it comes to the independence of the judiciary, we also see that being questioned quite a bit at the moment by the public. How do you as the Chief Justice respond to the public in that regard?
No one has come with any cogent example of how the judiciary has not carried out its work impartially, without fear, favor, or prejudice, as the Constitution expects. And if anything, the judgments that come from the courts show that they do their work fearlessly.
So with regard to what we see play out in the public domain, we've had now, since last year, the first instances of judges being impeached, which is new terrain for us as South Africa. We've seen now a former judicial personnel speaking out, against what they perceive to be going on, and, the back and forth. Does that undermine the confidence, do you believe, in the judiciary when we hear someone who may have been a Chief Justice previously, speak out and make certain pronouncements? How do you perceive that?
That is most unfortunate, and indeed has the potential to erode the public's confidence in the institution. But let me just say something very simple, that judges are human too. You are going to get bad judges that are bad human beings here, and I'm not saying any of my colleagues are bad human beings, but judges are humans, and they come from this very society that we all, live in. So you will get these cases. I think what should be commended is that when there is an allegation of malfeasance, when a judge is accused of having, conducted themselves improperly, action is taken immediately, and those cases are dealt with promptly. Well, maybe not as promptly previously, but there's been a huge improvement. I'm sure even our worst detractors will agree that complaints against judges are now dealt with as expeditiously as is possible, and most importantly, transparently.
Chief Justice Maya, do you believe that the Constitutional Court is accessible, understandable, and affordable to the ordinary South African?
Unfortunately, the answer has to be no. We are still a long way towards, making justice accessible to all South Africans. It's expensive. Even I would not be able to afford litigation at the level of this court or even the High Court. It's extremely expensive.
But that is a problem, isn't it?
It's a huge problem.
So how do we fix that? How do we make sure that the next 30 years doesn't see that same problem persisting? Because, again, people come to this court, they come to this building in the hope that they would receive some sort of attention, some sort of justice, but as you say, it's not affordable to begin with. Accessible, we can go down the line. So how do we change that? Well,
the court itself has a mechanism in place of being accessible to the public itself. You have the provision of direct access to the court, and anyone and everyone can approach the court. You do not need legal representation to approach this court, and your matter will be dealt with fairly and expeditiously. But it's not the only court, and there are other courts which do not have that same provision. And we all know that litigants stand a better chance with having their matters, their disputes, adjudicated in their favor if they are represented by experts. If you are floundering on your own, the court may try to assist you as much as possible, but you stand a better chance having legal representation. Without that, your chances are, well.
And just finally, should our constitution see greater changes at this point?
That is not for us to say, Sakina. The South Africans must make that decision and go to Parliament and have amendments to what we have already, if they think that's what's best for their needs.
And I know I'm just putting you on the spot, but thank you so much, Justice Maya. It's been such a pleasure visiting here with you. And of course, looking at the celebrations, totally looking forward to all the festivities just to mark 30 years of South Africa's Constitutional Court, and the absolute pleasure of sitting down with our Chief Justice, Mandisa Maya.
Thank you, Sakina.